So, there was no video yesterday because I had a lot to do. I was in the zone. I haven't touched Verbalize this week. I've still got, this is week 1 of 5 remaining. So I think I'm going to plan to get that done by the end of the project, hopefully by the end of this POC, but we'll see how we go. Because I was thinking about doing some of it today, but it's a gear change. It's a gear change from the thing that I'm doing at the moment, and the thing that I'm doing at the moment is really exciting, and I want to get that done. So what did I do yesterday? Well, let's see if we can make this work. He says, like he hasn't just tried this 3 seconds ago. Computer, open Bounty Hunter.
Welcome, Bounty Hunter. You may request access to your ship by providing its name and class.
Exit. Now that's all scratch audio. The ambience is overpowering. The delivery is not great. I literally just recorded that here on the computer that I use for streaming. But let me tell you about why that excites me. That audio is assembled dynamically. I've run some proof of concept tests that have glued together multiple pieces of dialogue, and the results of that have been really good. In that case, this is just the opening. This is the opening to the skill, so it's just one piece of dialogue that is played consistently. But that ambience bed is put in there dynamically. There is a fade in and a fade out, and there's tweaking to be done there because it comes in hot. It comes in a little hotter than I'd like to begin with. So it could probably stand to sort of fade in over either a longer period of time, or we'll see. But it's done dynamically, and then it is served to Alexa. Now, I ran into a whole host of issues yesterday. I found out a couple of things. I found out that Alexa does not like query parameters in the URLs that you send to MP3s, and it doesn't like redirects. What this means, and I'm going to get on a pulpit for a second about something, but what this means is the smarts for which audio files go into doing what are all going to be on the server side, on the audio server side, in terms of how do I glue this together? What am I grabbing? But that's really exciting because that means then that what I can do is on the Alexa side, I can say, okay, they fired the mass driver cannon, they've got critical hull damage currently, and they hit their target. And this is the state of the target currently. And I can do all of that in a URL. And I can send that to the server, and then the server goes, oh, okay, great. So this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to glue together because you've provided me everything that I need in that URL. The exciting thing about that is now that means that I can decouple the sound design for this proof of concept from the implementation in Alexa. I just need to ensure that there's a consistency in terms of the expectation between the URL that is provided from Alexa and making sure that that provides all of the necessary information over on the server side in order to do the job. But that means that I can go whole hog on putting the audio of this together separate to the Alexa skill, which is super exciting. Now, I said I was going to get on my pulpit for a second here. I wanted to take a brief moment. Whenever people talk about at the moment, their inability to step back from things, their inability to not just work. There are 2 books that I read, and I think it was about a year and a half ago now, but it was at a really critical juncture where I was just about to slip into some really bad work habits. And by bad, I mean just working 100% of the time. Because that doesn't get results. Where am I going with this? I'm going to illustrate with an example. So I finished that up last night at 4:30 a.m. because it was one of those things where I just couldn't get to bed without having that done, because there may have still been a major technical gremlin in the integration from what I've put together through to Alexa that might have stopped things from working. And if that happens, then it's battle stations, because who knows? Who knows how long it could take to resolve that? But once I got that done, great. I woke up this morning and I was just very tired. I still am very tired. But I didn't try and sit down. I knew that the next thing I had to do was figure out, okay, well, how does all of this hang together then? What's going to be the way of getting information from of getting information from Alexa over to the server side. And I didn't sit down and try and hammer out solutions to that straight away. I didn't try and write down on paper, well, this is what it's got to be. I just kind of let the problem sit. And admittedly, like, I haven't done a great deal yet today, but I was up until 4:30 in the morning, so I'm not going to beat myself too hard on that one. So what I did is I mulled over the problem, went through all of the important steps of waking up, hydrate, get coffee, all of that, exercise, have breakfast. And it just hit me like a literal bolt of lightning when I was having a shower. I was like, okay, well, this is what needs to happen. There were a couple of things that I did validate last night about Flask is the thing that I'm using over on the server, and I validated just a couple of things. I wanted to know that there were a couple of tricks that I could have up my sleeve. One, can I just provide any URL to Flask and have a default handler catch that? Because then if I can do that, then I can put all sorts of information in a URL, build that up, and then on the server side, I can pick that apart and decode it, if you will. Because I'm not providing access to a file. These files are generated dynamically. So I validated that last night, and I validated that separate to that, there are also ways of providing parameters as part of a URL, essentially. Not a query parameter, but having parts of the path to a given resource that could then be extracted out as variables. So two things I had up my sleeve. And I just I let the problems sit while I tended to my body. And it just, like that background processing did its job. And I'm not saying it's a perfect solution. I'm not saying that anything I'm doing here as part of a proof of concept is perfect, but it's a way forward. And it just my brain did its job, and then it just went, well, here's how I think it could work. And I think that that's a really important thing, that there is this temptation, because I've had this a lot. Like going back, because I've done tech consulting for 10 years plus, and I've both been this person, and I've tried to coach co-workers once I've sort of recognized that pattern, and I've seen them be that person. Trying to butt your head up against a problem, like it's not a very efficient way of solving things. There are absolutely times when we need to do that because deadlines are a thing. And I recognize that I'm in a supreme position of privilege at the moment because I have this time to do what I'm doing. But sometimes you just need to step away. You need to step away from the problem. You need to let your brain work things out. And those two books that I mentioned, both Off the Clock and Rest, I'll provide a link to both of those in today's post. I think that they are tremendous, science-backed explorations of why this is important. Because ultimately it comes back to, and there are so many things, this is what I used to rail against in the tech industry. There are so many practices, so many ways of working that are they're not efficient. They're not, like, if what you care about is getting stuff done, I am really getting on my high horse here, so I apologize for that. But if what you care about is getting stuff done in the most rapid way possible, so getting through your burn chart, if you're using Agile or whatever, getting from A to B, then rest, so sleep, exercise, and also that mental downtime to allow your brain to background process stuff are so critical. And yet they're the first things that we triage when we get into situations where things are important. And I know there's absolutely a position of privilege that needs to be unpicked with the authors who write these things. You need to examine their situation. And I'm not going to go through specific examples because I feel like I'm going to be just casting an aspersion without being able to back things up. But in the case of Laura Vanderkam, like, she mentions herself, she's the author of Off the Clock. She talks about, the two things that I make sure of when I'm in critical deadline situations is that my sleep doesn't suffer and my exercise doesn't suffer either. So that was all a very long tangent. But I think it's really important. It's really important because I think that they're the things that we just immediately assume that need to go. And with that goes our productivity. Now, if what you care about isn't yourself, it isn't your health, but it's getting from A to B, then those things need to be preserved. And it was I thought it might be worth talking about because it was a really good example of that. By necessity, because my brain was a potato when I woke up this morning, by necessity I just went through the rituals and just mulled over the problem in the back of my head without trying to pick at it too forcefully. And my brain did its job, which was fantastic. It's wonderful when it works, frustrating when it doesn't. So, what am I doing today? Today, I'm probably not going to go back to verbalize. I really want to crack that open, and I really want to close out verbalize. But now that I've got this idea about how the URL integration is going to work with Alexa, I want to push that forward more. I've got a pipeline in place which is deploying everything up to Amazon. That's all working fantastically, but I want to dig into this more, and I want to start moving some of those cards off the Trello board. Link is always in the posts and should be on the YouTube videos for the Trello board and by the asset list as well. But I want to start shifting some of those things forward. So that's what I'm going to do today. I might get to verbalize, but chances are low. One thing I want to talk about too, super exciting. I've got an FMod consult tomorrow with Maze Wallen, who's an awesome Melbourne-based designer. They are fantastic. Sorry, audio designer, I should say. Sound designer / composer / a bunch of other stuff, working on Wayward Strand. That's what Let me start that sentence again. So, I'm going to be using FMod for my approach to dynamic audio and generating soundscapes. It's going to be another tool in the bag. I was looking at both FMod and Wise and thinking that I was going to go down the path of using Wise, but for a couple of reasons. One, FMod does the job. Two, it's a Melbourne-based team who are behind FMod. Three, licensing costs for FMod are much lower than Wise. I think it's the path I'm going to go down. Well, not I think, it is the path I'm going to go down. So I've got a consult tomorrow. I've downloaded FMod in the meantime, and I'm going to start using that to build up soundscapes, dynamic soundscapes that then get rendered and can be served. That's the other thing that I didn't tell you too, from the audio that we played before. Not only is it putting an ambience bed down there, but what it's doing is it's going to a file that I've pointed it at. I've said, well, this is the ambience I want you to use. And then it's grabbing, and I know it may not be the best sound design approach, but what I wanted to do this from a technical perspective to make sure it was possible. It's grabbing a random segment. It's going, okay, well, the voiceover that you've given me, I'll put my hands up here so you can see them. The voiceover that you've given me is about this long. Okay, great. So I need to add this much for a fade in and fade out. Fantastic. I'm going to go to that audio, I'm going to go to that ambience file, and I'm going to pick a segment that's that long. So it's not just serving up the same thing over and over again. Why is that important? Because it is a subtly different experience. You won't hear it so much with that opening ambience because it's very much sort of a, it's just a track that I've pilfered from an amazing roguelike that I've started playing called Crying Suns. I've grabbed the soundtrack for that as well. It's just purely scratch audio. But that sort of comes in as, like, it's pretty much sort of an even sound throughout. So you won't hear it so much in there. But once I have generated soundscapes, it'll definitely be a difference in terms of just the subtle things that you hear. Just being that little bit different. You won't hear the same thing every time. So, good God, 13 minutes. It's been a big milestone that I've hit here, so that's part of why I've waffled on for so long. I'm really excited about what's happening next. I'm going to get back to what I'm doing, so I'm going to start building up this server that's going to be the brain of gluing all of this audio stuff together, and I'm going to start putting together some more of these responses to events. Really excited to do it. Have a wonderful day. I hope that you're well, and I hope that you're safe. There is a lot going on in the world, and I feel, even at the moment, I feel guilty for the giddiness that I have over what I'm doing, which is, on one hand, I suppose it's important to keep aware of what's going on, but on the other hand, it seems counterproductive to want to throw away or to move away from places of joy when we find them at the moment, because life is a lot, and it doesn't help anyone. For me to sit in a manufactured maudlin space just because things are bad for other people. Like, that doesn't help anyone. Anyway, it's another tangent. The lack of sleep is having an effect. All right, this has been a massive essay. I'm going to get back to it. You have a wonderful day. I will talk to you tomorrow.